Welcome to Do You AGRAY, a space where we have real conversations. I'm your host, Bassam, and we have Pastor Dan Smith with us again, and my wife, Jermeen. We've had a great time discussing some really deep topics, and if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2, please pause this video right now, go back and watch the first 2 videos. And today we had a really important question, a follow-up that we wanted to go with, and Jermeen is going to
Yes.
ask it.
So, a follow-up question to the topic that we had, why does God allow why is there suffering when there's a good God, is if there's a certain amount of evil that's going to happen regardless, why should I even pray for a miracle?
Because the evil is going to happen because Satan is in there fighting. But there's still plenty of rain. If God allows Satan to have so much evil, there's still good over here. And so God gives room for that to work. So the harder question is, how? And why not more? Because God hides, because of free choice, where we've already talked about that last time. The miracles are not signs that if you would just had enough faith, God would make you walk on water, make all the food multiply, and all those other things. All the things that He did magically, and Elisha, leading whole armies blind and filling up whole valleys with water. Just amazing stuff. God chooses now to do it more subtly so that people won't be forced to believe. He uses the whole community of faith to do it. There are 2 or 3 sort of guidelines. Where God chooses to work now, I think mostly, is by whispering wisdom to God's people, because that's not obvious. That's hidden in the mind. All right. So a very helpful book to me was a book called "Where in the World is God?" A guy named Z, I never heard about. The Upper Room publisher down in Tennessee somewhere, and I got a hold of it, and really helpful to me. So here's the story that he uses. I think it's a parable. 2 kids are graduating from high school. They're going to get married as soon as they finish high school. They're in love. School gets out at noon one day early, and he says, "Hey, go home and I'll pick you up and we'll go out and have a picnic and have a nice afternoon." So she goes home. He gets on the motorcycle to go to her house. As he rides the motorcycle out of the parking lot, he thinks, I forgot my helmet. Well, it's got to go 2 miles. I'm young, no problem, I'll get there. And he's riding, and he's in love, and the sun's shining, and he's got a powerful motorcycle, and finishing high school. He feels good. It's a nice thing. Comes to a big curve, and he kind of thinks maybe I should slow down a little, but the other voice in his head says, I'm young, I've got good reflexes, I can do this. But centrifugal force is too much. Flies off the road, hits a tree, and he dies. And so, of course, the police go to the girl's house, and they knock on the door, and they say, we have bad news. Your fiance just got killed. And what does she say? Where in the world was God? Thought God should be in here. We want God to have a big hand keeping the motorcycle on the road. That's what we wished, right? My father, but the bubble, keep this 10 seconds either way. The guy that's in my dad. He's here, my dad's here. Why right then? If he walked a minute later, could God do that? Just keep it from walking 1 minute. Pushing. If God had here, he could fix a quadriplegic, tiny little gap in the spine somewhere. Fix it. People get up and walk.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be the way he works. Where was God? God was the one whispering to him to get your helmet. God was the one riding on the motorcycle with him, and the sun and the rain and the wind and love and joy and happiness. God was there. And God was the one who said, slow down. You got a long life to live. You don't need to go so fast around this one curve to gain 5 seconds. Slow down. God is the voice in our head whispering all the time.
Sometimes, though, we feel like it's something that we haven't done, and that's why God hasn't answered. And so,
Louder.
so I have 2 stories to share. Back at college, there was a girl that had diagnosed with some sort of fallopian tumor or cancer in that region, and they had biopsied, and they found it to be malignant. So they had to get in there and get it out. And I remember a few of us in our group, we had gone to a mission trip together with the same girl. We fasted and prayed. She wanted to be operated on. They opened her up, didn't find anything. So to us, that was like, come on, like there's no explanation. This has got to be a miracle. This is unnatural.
But
Fast forward.
other
yeah.
stories.
I have another story where one of the ladies I work with, her dad was diagnosed of cancer, and his situation was getting worse and worse. And I prayed, and I prayed the same way, and I wanted God to answer, and I wanted her, I wanted her to see that really God loves her at this moment. And his situation got worse, and he ended up dying. And so sometimes we feel, you know what, maybe I didn't fast for the second situation, or I needed to pray harder, or God didn't take me seriously, or take my... So we start to take the blame upon ourselves why God is not answering, or he answers some and not others. Even another story, well, for me, I found that it seems like a lot of prayers I pray for others are more answered than the ones I pray for myself. I don't know why.
Well, I would say most of us, having prayed all our lives, have very few miracles, if any, to point to. No quadriplegics have walked. I had 2 quadriplegics in the hospital at the same time last year. One had to move to this bed so this one could come in. What are the odds of that? They're still quadriplegics today. They're moving their head a little bit. They push a button and they rocket around the room, bang the walls everywhere. A little miserable life. Quadriplegic. From 1 second accident in the car.
Yeah.
If it's going to be correct and it's going to honor God, it's got to be generalizable. We cannot just find one off anomaly somewhere crazy and the cancer is gone and say, okay, now we know we have the key. Pray this way, or pray with these people, or pray early, or pray loud, or pray with this promise, or whatever. Then we can repeat that and heal everybody.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful with any of those kinds of anomalies. So I am always nervous about that. I think most of the time when God does miracles, it's by God giving people in Loma Linda wisdom to come up with the proton center. God giving a dentist wisdom to get rid of this abscess tooth and taking your pain away and giving you a new implant. God gave you the wisdom to do that. He didn't do magic tonight and out this one and another. In the morning, there's an implant there. It's by giving people wisdom and going to school.
Yeah.
It's from God. And you say, God, help me do a good dental work today.
Yeah.
Let me raise my 4 kids well. Let's do this well. And good things happen.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis tells a story. He was going to go preach somewhere. Better get a haircut. So he thinks, okay, I got to go Saturday, preaching on Sunday. Then he gets a phone call that the sermon's canceled. Well, I have to get the haircut. And then I'm going to go anyway. I got my hair done. He has to ride a bus. He has to do 2 or 3 steps. Walks in the door, and the barber says, I was praying you would come today. Okay. I can handle that because the barber's praying. God is whispering to C.S. Lewis. He is praying to God, listen, what are you telling me today? What do you want me to do? And God whispers an impression, not a voice. Go get your haircut. And you walk in, and it works.
Yes.
and you have a tough case, and you don't know really what to do, and you say, and it comes to you, and you figure it out, and the person is,
This is actually happened
happened.
for sure.
That happened.
and so I pray, what should I preach about? And an answer comes, and 30 years later, I can do a podcast because I prayed for an answer, and God gave me the answer. Those things happen all the time. When you ask God to bless the food, what does God do? Does he go in there and take the sugar out and the triglycerides out?
Oh, be nice.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah.
So you need to pray when you're walking through the market that you will buy the right food that's healthy.
Yeah.
It's not going to do magic at the dinner table for you.
Yeah.
See, he's going to, as you make choices,
Yeah.
God will bless you when you make good choices. And he will lead you to those choices.
Yeah.
And he's whispering to you in the market all the time. Not the Twinkies, not the Oreo cookies, the carrots and the asparagus. See, but you don't want to listen, then you won't get the right food, and you'll pay a price over here. But the miracle will come over eating the right food, listening to the Spirit over and over again.
Wow.
And maybe shopping the best price on something. And God makes miracles, and he loves matching all this stuff up
Yeah.
because he's talking. I use the World Wide Web. But the World Wide Web started with a few universities, a few military places had a server. It began to connect. And then they added more servers. Now we got millions and millions and millions of servers all over the world. You can light it up, But if one continent goes out with no electricity in Africa, you will get fewer hits on Google because it's gone.
Yeah.
But if you do it, you can get 500,000 hits in half a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're all on.
Yeah.
If you have Christians all listening to God, and God says, I got Dan Smith needs money for that container. And my brother-in-law says, I'm going to send Dan $200 and $200, and we get the container over, and those other chairs heal people for the next 30 years because of a network of talking. Does that work?
Yeah.
These people that I'm going to tell you about, I was just with 2 weeks ago. He was doing a crusade in the Philippines, and his computer died. And he called me and said, Pastor Dan, I need a computer. I was a last year. So I forget who I called. Anyway, back then I would call 20 people, get $100 each, and buy a computer. And then I said, how do I get it over there? I called down Filipino people. And she said, Dan, the ambassador choir group are going back to the Philippines, and they're coming down La Sierra, and they're coming up Highway 15 in half an hour.
Wow.
I said, if I get it to you, can you get it to them? Yes. Okay, so it goes from my donors to me to that lady. She drove out to 15. They drove off on an exit, handed it through the door to those kids. That guy took it to his hotel room that night and put some software on it so he could say it was used to avoid the customs. They handed it to the girl who was the daughter of the union president in the Philippines. That's how many? 4 or 5 now. Gets over there to him. Gives it to the secretary. Secretary takes it over to where that guy was. In 2 nights, they were using that computer in the Philippines.
Wow.
And there were 9 steps
Yeah.
between me and him.
Wow.
I think God loved doing that.
Yeah.
Choreographing all this stuff. What did he do when Jesus was born? He's got shepherds and angels coming here and wise men moving from over here.
Yes.
And then he's got to go have a dream, go to Joseph to go to Egypt instead of going here. He's got stuff moving all over the place. Can God handle that? Yes, he can. But if he make a dream to Joseph and he doesn't follow, and he says, I'm going to stay right here, I'm not going to Egypt, then a different story's going to come out. Right?
Yeah.
So then miracle doesn't happen because he's...
So would you say then that that praying for a miracle is crucial because God can still whisper the wisdom?
Now you're a server. You're one of those World Wide Web servers because you're praying. I don't think prayer changes God. I don't think prayer makes God more smart, more wise, more willing, more anything. How are we going to say that? That means I have a better idea than God. I'm smarting God up. I'm bringing God up to speed on what he ought to do. How can I say that about God? But when I pray, I say, God, use me. Now he's got me. You're the mother of 4. Now you got those 4 listening to their mother. Now you got 100 patients. Now you got a podcast that's adding. Okay, you see? So God changes you. You're next to those people. You change them.
So the miracle happens in our brain,
Listening to the Holy.
most importantly.
Yes. And in the accumulation of magic and miracles, wonderful things get done. As people get well from cancer and money gets accumulated, and all of a sudden we get a whole ship full of rice to go down to Haiti when they have an earthquake or whatever.
Now, you're a missionary, right? I want to get your input on this because I've heard from a lot of friends that have done missions that they see more obvious miracles abroad. I had a friend, he's a pastor now. He talked about his trip to India, and he actually witnessed a resurrection. Somebody was resurrected from the dead in India. Would you say that miracles happen elsewhere because of they don't know God?
There's me some anomalies that don't fit my model. I cannot answer all of that without knowing the details.
Or could it be faith?
I can just tell you that it's difficult to explain. For a while, Steve Daly, remember Steve Daly was on our campus? Do you remember Steve Daly before Sam Lenore? That's too far back for you.
Yeah.
He was really into this. There were people supposedly raised from the dead in Mozambique. I read the whole story.
Yeah.
There was a lot of questions about that story. But those same missionaries went from Mozambique to Singapore, and nothing more happened. Why in Mozambique and not in Singapore?
Yeah.
So these are hard questions. I have a couple resurrection stories in the Philippines. And they were in the casket, and they're getting ready to bury this person, and all of a sudden they're banging inside, and they opened it up, and she sat up and lived 5 more years.
Wow.
I have to assume that she hadn't fully died. I don't know what to do with that.
You were there?
Otherwise, I said to this guy, "You come along with me, and we're going to raise some more people back in my hometown."
Yeah.
So if it works once, it's got to be generalizable if it's a choice from God. It cannot just be a one-off. It doesn't make any sense. And so I think we can learn from this other model. I use a ripple. When you go to a lake, you drop a big rock in the lake, the ripple will be biggest where?
In the middle.
Where the rock was.
Yeah.
Oh, ground zero. It makes ripple. By the time it gets to shore, smaller. We can have a tsunami, wall water in Indonesia. By the time I got to Hawaii, just a ripple. When I pray for the governments of the world, it didn't seem to do much good with Trump and other people that I pray for. By the time it gets to China, it doesn't seem to do any good at all. But when I pray for God to help me preach a sermon good, more good happens here. But I preach my sermon, and 1,000 people listen. I impact them. They go to those people. And that message goes to all over that region, because Pastor Dan talked about that idea about God, and it went everywhere. I have more impact where I was. When it gets to China, the ripple's pretty. I don't think very often I can pray and all of a sudden God is doing miracles in China because of Dan Smith praying. And all of a sudden, there are people who believe that.
Yeah.
I think the evidence is very thin for that. I think the evidence is more God works through Christian servers. If 2.3 billion Christians pray, good stuff will happen. And we'll get computers, and we'll build a university, and we'll build a school, and we'll build an Arlington church, and we'll have a new podcast in your office because you listened to God and said, I think I have something to say to the world, and I'm going to buy equipment, and I'm going to find a way to make a little studio, and we're going to make a difference. Why did you do that? Because you heard the voice of God to you. So one more server, God, one more couple active for God. And if you can raise those 4 little kids for God, and all these people that are listening.
But there are times where more things can happen because of prayer and fasting. Then Jesus tell his disciples, like,
what I don't want to say is that fasting now earns God to be more active in your on your side. Like I suffered, so therefore God will do more.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a deal like that. That's
Not
not what
that I'm
people
not.
think.
It's not that I'm not doing it.
You are now
No.
clearing up the fog in your pipeline, so you will hear God better because you got the pipeline more pure.
Okay.
But people are like, okay, if I give up coffee, God will do this for me.
Yeah.
I've had people say that to me. They're making deals with God. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the best way.
Yes.
But I think anything you can do, the more you got to turn the noise off in your house. You can't be sitting and watching a football game and having a racket going into your head all the time with your ear pods and expect God to get through. You got to have some quiet time.
Yeah.
You know, so call so-and-so and send a note to so-and-so and drop by their house on the way. And how about this? And all of a sudden you get in tune with ideas that you want to do. And if you do some and you impact other, like a pool, I have a pool table in my house.
Yes.
You hit one ball, it bangs all the others everywhere.
Yeah.
Because you got 4 little kids that are listening to you. And they're going to be who they're going to be. And you will impact the world through those kids. Other lady at Arlington Church has 7. You know her? 7. I went to the house, just running everywhere. What an impact that lady has. 7 kids.
Yeah.
We go and get Bible studies, man. Some of them got baptized, I guess, since I've been
Yeah.
gone from there.
Yeah.
So I pray for that.
Yes.
You want 1 minute? And then
Yes.
close with this.
Perfect.
So the story I tell all the time, a guy just become a Christian and had no other experience, never heard of prayer. So the guy said, you have to start praying. Well, what do you mean I should pray? Well, talk to God. He said, pray for stuff. He said, pray for something and nothing happens, I'll give you $500. And if something does happen, you have to give me $500. Okay, what should we pray about? Well, maybe you should pray for some country in the world. Anyway, they agreed on Kenya. They began to pray for Kenya. So he prayed every day for Kenya for 5 months. Nothing happened. One night, Saturday night, he's at a banquet. And that lady said, what do you do? I sell medical supplies. What do you do? I have an orphanage in Kenya. He knows the money's gone. So he asked 100 questions. He finally said, you want to come, you know? Yes, I want to come. Flies to Kenya. Raises money for all the medical supplies. Sends a container of medical supplies over to that orphanage. Goes over several times. Kind of gets to know the government. They're going through a prison somewhere. And in a prison, there were 24 political prisoners. He said, you shouldn't do that. They didn't do anything wrong. Let them go. What are you guys doing? He came home. 6 weeks later, the Secretary of State Department and the president called him up. Were you in Kenya recently? Yes. Did you go to a prison? Yes. What did you see? Well, I saw some political prisoners. What did you say? I said, this is wrong. You should let him go. He said, they let all 24 go yesterday. Does that work? This guy's praying here.
Yeah.
God changes him, changes Kenya, changes the prisoners, moves things around.
Yeah.
Now those prisoners will go free and do whatever they're going to do. And the bowling balls go crazy because one guy's praying in his bedroom. I think it works like that. And someday God's going to have a little map and show you the links
Yeah.
of how it all fit together.
At that point, I don't think we'll care.
Wouldn't that be amazing to know what difference your life made and you didn't even know what you said and did?
Yeah.
I had people come up to me sometime in the Philippines. You baptized me. I was the one. Are you sure? Now they're preaching themselves. I baptized them 20 years ago. You don't know what the connections will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question a little bit? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It sounds easy and simple. I've been sweating this stuff out for 30 years. But gradually, a few little things. I think there's some anchor points. We don't have everything figured out. We have room to grow, but I think we have a few things that still honor God, but reflect reality the way it really is.
Well, we've been blessed by the 30 years of struggling to come
Thanks for the
with
time.
answers.
God bless your new project. Do you agree?
Yes.
You agree.
Do you agree? Let us know if you agree in the comments.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.